Someone asks, what are some of the INFJ cognitive functions and how do they interact? Well, the first and foremost cognitive function for an INFJ is called introverted intuition. And the way that works, according to Carl Jung, is as an introvert, we as INFJs are people who prefer to look inward and measure our own internal subjective world, which, yes, that world is built on what we take in from the outside through our experience and senses, but it takes on and develops a life and character of its own. And it's something that's very subtle, especially for an INFJ, something that's very nebulous and daydreamy and difficult to nail down, which is why I think INFJs are drawn to Myers-Briggs, because the first step in the Myers-Briggs process is owning and identifying that first and most fundamental piece of ourselves that is difficult to explain, but that the more we learn or the more we see using Myers-Briggs as a framing mechanism, the more we can understand ourselves. So what is introverted intuition? Well, as an introvert, we prefer our own internal subjective world as opposed to the external objective world of other people and situations, moving parts happening around us. We take in information from the external world at all times through our senses. And then what introverted intuition does is makes connections that bring all the pieces that we take in together in a way that makes sense to us and shows something that we come to believe is possible and that we come to see as the purpose of our lives, the thing that we are drawn and driven and capable of doing, the thing that's the most worthwhile for us to give our time and attention to. And you ask how the cognitive functions interact. Well, what I've just described is how our dominant, first, most prominent cognitive function, introverted intuition, interacts with its opposite, which is our least prominent, least comfortable cognitive function called extroverted sensing. Its opposite, the opposite of introverted intuition. And all types, first and foremost, especially according to Carl Jung's initial typology, are a dominant function dealing with the fact that that means because they're so skilled and capable in this one area, it means they're completely lacking and completely incapable in the opposite area. And the purpose of our lives, the thing that Myers-Briggs shows us how to do, is to move from our dominant to our inferior function. All functions want to arc and complete themselves in their opposites. And for the introverted intuitive, like an INFJ, what that means is not just seeing what we see through introverted intuition, seeing those connections and meanings and possibilities, but making something happen that's outward and experiential with what we see, actually having a difference or making a difference in the world around us. And the way we do that, the way we bridge that gap, is through the second and third functions. Extroverted feeling, for the INFJ and introverted thinking. Again, two opposites. Now, the way these two interact for the INFJ is that our auxiliary second function, extroverted feeling, is actually our key to stepping up and stepping out into that external world that we hope to touch or change or make an impact in through our introverted intuition. Instead of trying to be an extroverted sensor, which we often do because we realize that's what we're lacking, and we just try to make ourselves into what we aren't so that we can reach that world. But as is the case with all types, that kind of direct attempt never works. It's always limited and cringy to see from the outside and to experience once you try it. And it's kind of like trying to always flex a muscle. It's very unnatural, and it shows, and it's difficult. And that's why Myers-Briggs offers an alternative route to the inferior function, which is through the auxiliary function, extroverted feeling. So instead, to summarize, instead of trying to be an extroverted sensor, which will be someone who just comes into a situation and just is a force to be reckoned with, kind of moves all the pieces the way that they see fit to their own advantage. We're very inept at doing that. We'll feel the least like a real person when we try to act that way. But instead of doing that, if we exercise extroverted feeling, which is using our intuition to look into the needs and values of other people and how those values are being hindered and how they could be not hindered, which is what we see if we use our intuition that way, that's the way we bridge the gap to the external world. And that's when we come to the third function, introverted thinking, which, because it's introverted, for us, it is a lot more comfortable, and it's something we would default to instead of extroverted feeling because it feels more comfortable, and extroverted feeling feels more like stepping out of our comfort zone to connect with other people. We're introverts, after all. If you bypass extroverted feeling and go straight to introverted thinking, all you'll end up doing, how your first and third functions will interact without the second, is think endlessly about your intuitions and cut them to pieces and kind of analyze them to death, but never step out and use your intuition in a way that actually benefits other people, which you as an INFJ, we as INFJs, that's what we want to do. So the correct use, according to Myers-Briggs, of introverted thinking then is basically as we step out, as we follow the leading of auxiliary extroverted feeling, introverted thinking then comes in and tightens up the process and kind of shows, okay, we're expending too much energy here. We're not saying this efficiently here as we try to connect. We've tried this one method for this long and it hasn't worked and it doesn't seem to fit. How else, what other opportunities do we have? Kind of measuring what we do as we reach out to connect with others through extroverted feeling, measuring that critically with introverted thinking. And if we follow that sequence of dominant introverted intuition being the thing that we own and identify with, using that to reach out and connect with the values of others through extroverted feeling, tightening the process through introverted thinking, we will eventually, indirectly, come to life in the external sensory world where we're least comfortable and most inept. So that's the process of Myers-Briggs, and that's how the four cognitive functions of the INFJ interact with one another.